Afternoon, everyone. This is Reyes Ramirez with Fresh Arts. If you haven't been here before, if you haven't tuned in before to our to this conversation series, well, we are Fresh Arts. We're an arts nonprofit organization, and what we do is we provide resources to artists, particularly in the Houston area, but through our digital programming, like the one you're seeing right now, we've gone beyond that reach. We've had people tuning in from all parts of the United States. Don't know about the world yet, but we'll get there. But as I said before, we traditionally provide workshops, professional development, resources, whether it be through information, like knowledge sharing resources to artists. And so this part of those larger programs is another cog in that. What it is we're doing a conversation series with local Houston artists on how they are adapting to the COVID-19 crisis. Today, we have a really great set of guests that I'll introduce in a minute. But first, let me just give you some more context. And so today we'll be having Manalo and Marissa Castillo, who represent two very great organizations, that being Filipinx Artists of Houston and TEATRX, respectively. And we'll get to know them in a minute. But if you have been here before, well, thank you. Thank you for tuning in again. If you haven't, as I said before, and I'm sure if you have been before, let me just reiterate that we have an archive of videos of all the discussions and workshops that we've done in the past, and we have that available on our website. So if you just go to fresharts.org and you go to our resource library, you can see all those conversations. You can rewatch them if you like. But as always, if you've seen them before, or if you revisit those, you'll always see that we have great conversations with our guests. And so today, this will be archived in the future. So if you particularly like this conversation, or you think someone else could really use that information, well, you can send this to them, and we'll get that information to you soon. Another note is that during today's conversation, you're more than welcome to post in your comments, post in the Facebook comments, any questions, any comments you want to make. And if it's a question, we'll make sure to screen them and then get them to our guests and ask them your question. So again, we're always part of an interactive experience. We want that. So while you're at it, please, while you're here watching, feel free to give a shout out to anyone you feel would like this conversation, or just to tell us where you're tuning in from. We always like to know who's coming in, who's listening from where. And I enjoy that particularly, just to know who's seen my face, essentially. But yeah, so again, we're going to start with Matt. And so Matt, I'm going to read your bio, and then I'll read Marissa's, and then we'll bring him on. So Matt Manalo is an artist and community organizer. He was born and raised in Manila, Philippines, and is called Houston, Texas home since 2004. He received his BFA in painting at the University of Houston. He runs a community-based alternative art space called the A-Leaf Art House and founded Filipinx Artists of Houston. Matt creates work which involves elements of painting, drawing, sculpture, photography, and printmaking. Being a first-generation immigrant, Manalo discusses his experiences navigating around the physical and social structures of society, while exploring social issues like erasure, colorism, and colonial mentality in his work. The group he is representing today, but among the many, many efforts that he does, Filipinx Artists of Houston is a collective of Filipinx visual, performing, literary, and culinary, and multidisciplinary artists in Houston, Texas. Founded and organized by Matt and Bridget Bray, their mission is to grow a creative Filipinx community committed to discovering and sharing the stories of voices unheard through each of their own gifts, while being rooted in the collective individual experience of being human. So that's Matt. And with Marissa Castillo was born and raised in Lubbock, Texas. She attended Cornish College of the Arts in Seattle, Washington, and received a BFA in theater with an emphasis in original works. Following graduation, she performed in Seattle for a few years before moving to Houston, Texas, where she now resides. She is the mother of 2 boys and balances life as an artist with substitute teaching, arts administration, acting, and playwriting. She is a co-founder and marketing and communications director of TEATRX, a Latinx theater company in Houston, Texas. TEATRX is producing a 5-episode web series that culminates in a live stream performance of a bilingual adaptation of Shakespeare's famous balcony scene from Romeo and Juliet. The web series will document our search for theatricality through virtual platforms, the challenges facing Houston theater artists, and the effects outside factors COVID-19/social distancing have on people's relationships with their loved ones. And so if we could please welcome them both. How's it going, y'all?
Hi. Hey, Reyes. Thanks for having us here.
What's up, Matt? Hi, Marissa. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and just throw some kind of basic questions to get to know y'all, and then we'll get into like the deeper aspects of what's going on and how your groups and organizations are working with that. So, Matt, can you give an overview of your work and what your usual practices are, whether it be the personal or through Filipinx Artists of Houston?
For my personal, I have a home studio, so, I basically, do some daddy duties in the morning and then come back to the studio and make work, and maybe attend to some meetings throughout the week and stuff like that. And then that's it. But, and then for Filipinx Artists of Houston, we usually gather more than once a month physically. We have meetings. We meet at Asia Society of Texas. And then we do, we have like social gatherings, and we try to support other art events that's happening here in town. Unfortunately, with the pandemic, with the social distancing and stay-at-home order, a lot has changed. Obviously, for myself, I was struggling with the homeschooling part, and then with Filipinx, we've just been convening online through Zoom.
Great, and we'll get to that, kind of how those convenings are happening, and y'all have had a resource session with your members and with the community at large. Can you also talk a little bit about your A-Leaf Art House project and how that's going, or how what that is and what that was before all this?
Oh yeah, well, A-Leaf Art House is a project that I started with Diverse Works through the Project Freeway Fellowship, which I received last year. It's an alternative art space, which is community-based. So we try to highlight a lot of the local talents in A-Leaf, and we also collaborate with local organizations, and for the ones who want to start including art, in their language of community service and all that. This year we're working with Antonius Bowie through the installations fellowship with Art League and Houston Mayor's Office of Cultural Affairs and Houston Arts Alliance. So yeah, we're currently having shows at the space right now.
Yeah, awesome, Matt. I'm always envious of how you do that all. Likewise with Marissa. I mean, I'm swamped, but then y'all have like children and families, and I'm like, I'm sure I look like a chump with regards to y'all, but I'm always grateful for the work y'all are doing. Marissa, same question. Can you give an overview of your work and your usual practices and those of TEATRX?
So I'm an actress. I do film and theater both. Right now, there's not a whole lot going on in the theater side of things. We're not able to gather at the moment. I'm getting better at self-tapes, which has been nice. You might see me in a CVS commercial with my hands like this somewhere. So that's, as an actress, that's what I primarily do. And then I'm also a co-founder of TEATRX Latinx Theater Company and the marketing director. And so right now we're working on this project. It's a web series, which is very different for us, but just kind of documenting what it's like to create theater or try and create a quasi-theater kind of thing through Zoom. And then you'll get to see the final product here next week.
Yeah, could you kind of talk a little bit about kind of what TEATRX has done in the past? I'm a huge fan of your Life is Short, La Vida es Corta series. Could you kind of talk about what you've done with those efforts?
Yeah, so a big thing that we have noticed is we don't see a lot of the Latinx community at theaters, and a lot of it is because they haven't seen themselves at theaters, and so they don't go. But they are a huge part of what make movie theaters popular. And so one of our founders, Jorge Diaz, he was like, you know, the Latinx community loves films. Why don't we put the two together, films and plays? And so that was kind of the origin of our short play and short film, short play and there's my thing. The short play and a short film festival. There wasn't anything like it, but I think they're starting to pop up now. We're starting to put these two mediums together. We really try and explore the range of Latinidad using the two forms. So making sure that we're hitting the Latinx community, the Chicano community, the Afro Latino community, the LGBTQ community, all within that one festival. It's just a lot of fun to be able to use that one platform and tell 15, 20, 25 stories all in the span of one weekend. And that just like hits the range of our Latinx community, which is vast and different and colorful and beautiful.
Yeah, and that was actually going to be one of my questions later on, but it seems like you already answered it. But like, these are groups that particularly play or go into kind of certain aspects of identity, whether it be within like Latinx and Filipinx. Matt, could you also kind of address that, like why found an organization or artist collective like Filipinx Artists of Houston? What was the impetus for that?
Well, we started Filipinx through a conversation that I had with Bridget Bray. It all started when they had an art show featuring Filipinx artists here in Houston, but then they were showcasing other artists from out of town. So I started a conversation with her saying that, hey, we have Filipinx artists here as well, and so I was curious what Asia Society as an institution, what they wanted to do because of our because we exist. So we wanted to work on visibility, which is one of the things that Marissa mentioned. And there hasn't really been any kind of Filipinx focused art creative community that has existed in Houston. So yeah, we decided to go on and start the group. Originally, I thought it was only going to be around 20 maybe artists, and now we're like almost 40 active members, and it's all from painters, sculptors, performance artists, even theater, and then we have musicians as well, songwriters, poets, so we're also thinking about inclusivity, and that's the reason why we use the term Filipinx.
Absolutely. So really great groups with really great purposes, and I'm always kind of in awe of the amazing talent that is here in Houston, and whether or not they're being featured, that's always been the issue. So again, thank y'all for kind of working on these efforts and being kind of champions of that. So thank you for that work. All right, so here we go. So kind of going deeper into like what is going on now with the COVID-19 crisis. Matt, could you kind of go into how the COVID-19 crisis has affected the practice, or what Filipinx Artists of Houston does, and what are you doing now to kind of address that or to kind of adapt to that?
It's been hard because we're a community who always like to gather and eat. So we love sharing food, and we love just convening together physically, and that has kind of being in the pandemic has kind of strained that part of our community. But we try to like what I mentioned. I mean, we're always communicating like every day almost, and we try to look at things where we can be supportive of other initiatives, we we also stand in solidarity with Black Lives Matter, and we're doing some work where we can contribute, like translations and all that. And then we've also been sponsoring other arts movements outside of Houston. We recently sponsored the movie Lumpia with the Pacific Arts Movement, which is based in California. And then, yeah, I mean, we're basically just trying to see where we can share our talents and use our energy into, supporting and finding ways of how else we can do that with other communities.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen real quick, and I'm going to show your website real quick. Could you talk a little bit about, and you'll probably see it on the website, but the resource sharing, the session that y'all did, for example, that one, I think it was like last month, I believe, and kind of, can you go into like maybe the thought behind that and why that happened? So let me. There we go. So here's the website. Really great stuff. Could you kind of go into, again, like you did like a Facebook Live / Zoom resource sharing or discussion online. Could you kind of go into, why y'all decided to move with that or go into that medium and how that was, and whether or not, you're going to keep doing that or any other things that y'all have been discussing?
As an organization, and I guess, taking pride at our history and culture, we would like to. We always we try to actively be committed in practicing the virtue of the word kapwa, which is, shared identity, equality, or being with others. And for us, kapwa is basically our obligation towards fellow people. So for us, resource sharing is one of that, and we feel like that's one of the responsibilities as being a community, as being active in different, smaller communities in the city, and I mean, it's just one way of helping is being putting together like a resource. And so in that sense, we're not only I mean, also being able to check ourselves and hold ourselves accountable in terms of like what we say, and we making sure that we try to do it as well, putting things into action.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, like even at Fresh Arts, we kind of have that moment of like, oh, how do we best do this, and how do we stay in contact with our community? Another great thing that I saw was, I'm going to share my screen again. Maybe you can talk about a little bit about that. Y'all have like a directory of artists. Let me see. Yeah, right here where y'all have like this really great directory of artists, and you even break it down into, like, as you mentioned before, like the diversity of like the mediums and the art that y'all are working in, that y'all have. Could you kind of go into like the creation of this and like how y'all are using this resource to kind of have that online presence?
One of the goals of the Filipinx Artists of Houston is visibility, and that also includes visibility in the internet sphere. So we wanted to make sure that people are seeing each other's works, and even for our other artists who, because we are inclusive, so that also means that we also have artists who are just beginning in their path to be, to fully being an artist. So, maybe some of them doesn't have a website yet or haven't figured that part out yet. But then if they have their works up on our website, so they can easily just use the website and share that as their, profile or portfolio in case that they need to use that in the future. Also, so that people will know who the Filipinx artists here in Houston are. It's not the complete list yet, but yeah, we're slowly compiling everyone to be in that directory.
Absolutely. I think that's a really, really great resource. And again, there's just a plethora of talent within Houston, and especially in regards to the Filipinx community. Really great stuff coming from that community and from this group. And so thank you for that. I'm going to go ahead and ask Marissa some of the same questions. So hang tight. All right, Marissa. Yeah. So y'all have been, again, like one thing I mentioned is like the Life is Shorts festival that was like traditionally been, or at least the one I went to was like at the Match. And that was really great. But moving forward, y'all are now doing a totally different venture. Could you kind of go into that and like what the thought process behind that was and why move into that? And in fact, you provided a video clip. So I'm going to show that real quick and then we'll see that. And then if you could talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
It is my lady.
Romeo.
Oh,
Romeo.
it is mi amor.
¿Por qué debes de ser Romeo?
Like she knew she were.
Yeah, so the really great kind of promo that we're going to go into this, and y'all even had like kind of like a roundtable discussion, I believe, on Facebook Live yesterday. Was it?
Yesterday.
Yeah. So go ahead, please. Could you kind of explain that process?
Yeah. So a big part of I think what started this process was we usually do. The idea was during the spring we do Reflexion, which is a series where we work on new plays. However, because of the things that were happening, we're stuck on the idea of not being able to assemble and what that means for us. And one of the people in our group, our production coordinator, Ashley Para, she was working on a bilingual adaptation of Romeo and Juliet. And so we thought about specifically the balcony scene and how relevant that is now, and how many people around the world are being separated by COVID-19 with social distancing. People who can't see their grandparents, who can't hug a loved one because they work in the healthcare industry. And so with all of that, I think we decided really we wanted to hone in on the balcony scene. And true to our mission, we like to explore things with the Latinx lens. And something that Ashley Para is passionate about is using Shakespeare's language and creating that bilingual adaptation of it with the Spanish language. Because, his themes are so universal. And even with the Spanish language, it still works. It's still this beautiful, and you still get all the nuances of what he's originally written. And so we wanted to focus in on that, but we also knew we didn't want to do a stage reading or a Zoom reading. We knew that people were doing it, and they're fun and they're great, but I think we just wanted to try and mix it up a little and engage with our audience in a different way. We want to show them what's going on behind the scenes. We want to show them that, even though we can't assemble, we're still actively working on our art and our craft and representing the Latinx community in any way that we can. And so that was kind of how that all got started.
Yeah, and kind of like, yeah, I've seen those, like a lot of TV shows are doing like those table reads now, like reunions and all that great stuff. And so for y'all, how did y'all kind of do rehearsals? Like, how do rehearsals even happen through like this kind of medium?
It's all through Zoom. It's all online. So it's a whole different new thing. I mean, we are dropping off supplies for Tech Week because the actors are gonna, kind of set up their own lights, and we give them like supplies to help do that. We're gonna drop it off at their door as much as possible, just because, the numbers are getting higher, and we want to make sure that everyone is safe, including us. You know, we have 2 boys, and we want to make sure that we're safe and we're keeping their families safe as well, and the people they live with safe. And so, you know, doing those social distance drop-offs, and then having those Zoom rehearsals where we're like, all right, move the light here, maybe stand here, move your video device here, just so that we can kind of figure out how to make it theatrical. It's been an adventure. It's been fun and different. Um, Trying to find that theatricality. It's, you know, sometimes it's hit and sometimes it's a miss. Sometimes it's great, and we'll see. We're still exploring all of that in the next coming week of rehearsals until we have that final performance next Friday.
Absolutely. You know, again, as everyone's testing out new stuff, and I think this is kind of like, I think shows kind of like how adaptable and great artists can be with different mediums and different ways to present the craft. So if we can bring Matt back on, and so like again, I think that's kind of like obviously the theme of what we're going on is like, how, you know, we continue in this context. How do we continue to meet and join? How do we continue to work on our craft, uplift communities, all that great stuff in this context? So Matt, could you talk about like what models perhaps y'all looked at to one, inform Filipinx Artists of Houston, but also like how you're all venturing forward now with this context? So like, you know, what model did you look at to do like a resource sharing video or session, or like even just the building of a Filipinx artist registry and all that great stuff?
Well, with the Filipinx artist registry, we kind of looked into there's a larger artist directory here in the U.S. called the Filipino American Artist Directory. So we kind of like borrowed the directory style of it, and then just, you know, like looking into different ways, you know, like because the pandemic has kind of put a halt as well with spaces, you know, like museums and galleries and stuff. So we just thought that, you know, I mean, the internet is also a space, so might as well like take advantage of that, and you know, so it really also puts into question like what is valid, you know, what is a valid event? Is it because it's Zoom, or is it a valid art show because it's online, you know? So a lot of things are possibly going to change, you know, if ever we get out of this pandemic. But you know, I think it's important to also have like a good group who's there all the way with you, and you know, FXAH has been solid in terms of like getting together, in terms of like just getting into like one single space and just think of like the best ways we can do things, and you know, not without even convening like physically, but you know, of course we still miss the food part, and maybe like you know, the just being around each other, but you know, yeah, like today I found out that y'all were using StreamYard, and because we were also struggling with trying to figure out how Zoom was going to be used, and how we'll be able to do like a Facebook Live video with more than one member. So yeah, you know, we're also trying to look into other art organizations and what they're doing, and see how we can also borrow some of those ideas.
Yeah, one interesting thing that y'all did was y'all put out a statement in support, and you mentioned earlier Black Lives Matter. Could you talk about like that process? How does a community come to a consensus to agree upon a statement like that? And that process that happened digitally.
You know, it was brought up by one of our members, Anthony Guevara, Um, and he mentioned like, hey, we need to put out a statement in solidarity because this is what we stand for as a community, and everyone agrees, thankfully. um, so we put up, well, I put up a document, a Google document where everyone had access to, and then I started typing stuff, and then I was like, okay, hey, you guys want to check it out and see, if we are saying the right things and really, um, and saying things that reflects the community and our values, and yeah, some things were just added on, but yeah, that's how we came up with it. And then the next day, we released it. Once we got approval from everyone, we released it.
I think that's a really cool, like, kind of, aspect of community, is that you kind of open that up to everyone to kind of include their voice in that, all for a purpose. And you did it all digitally, which is, again, impressive. That's great. So, I mean, thank you so much for that. Marissa, same questions. Like, what did y'all look at for models to kind of put together these efforts? Again, as I said before, there's been like TV show readings and stuff like that. But again, this is a totally new venture. What models did you look at? What inspired y'all kind of put it this way?
So some of it is just, we have members in our group who have just great ideas, which is what you want. You want people who are in the room and are just throwing things on the wall, and you're like, maybe it sucks, but maybe it's brilliant. And so some of it is just, I have to attribute to the people on our team. They're really fabulous and are always coming up with really great ideas. And so it was, I don't even know who it was. It was just like, let's do a web series with all of the recorded footage that we have, and then adding in some of the other stuff. So a lot of it's recorded footage. Some of it is footage that we've asked like the actors to do on their own time. And then as far as like for the performance, a lot of it was just looking into like best practices of Zoom. What does that look like? And then watching some of the readings that we've seen with like the Landing Theater Company just did theirs. And I think Mildred's has just started doing theirs as well. And so watching some of those and seeing, kind of what works, what doesn't work, so that then we can kind of figure out where we want to be in this land. Because I think what we're looking for, what we're aiming for, is a little different in terms of, we're on Zoom and we know we're on Zoom, but we want to see if we can find those theatrical elements even on that digital platform. And so it's just seeing kind of that stage reading Zoom, and there are these little highlights of it that we see in each of these readings, and then just really honing in on some of those and saying, okay, this right here, this is a little theatrical. How can we make it more? And so it just, all the work that the people in Houston are doing right now already have just been a great help.
Great. So Matt, could you kind of talk about how the group members have responded to this? Like you said, you created like a Google Doc of like this, like to create this statement. And so can you talk about maybe how like your members are responding, and how like, the input from the community, and how Filipinx Artists of Houston is moving forward?
I mean, so far, we've received nothing but great input from the community. Moving forward, I believe that writing a statement just solidifies like what we stand for, and so that we can be able to move forward and address problems that we are also facing within our own community when it comes to anti-Blackness and racism within our community. Yeah, and that's how we want to move forward, is that we need to first, fix our inner problems within our families, within our friends, and then within ourselves even. And so we can fully support and stand by the Black Lives Matter movement.
That's great. Marissa, same question. How has the audiences, or like the members, the people that TEATRX works with, how's that process? How are they responding?
I think that as far as the Black Lives Matter movement, is that what we're talking
You can if you want, or if you want to, yeah, however
I
you want to that.
just what you said about like facing our own anti-blackness in the Latinx community. It's huge and it's there, and a big part of what we do is make sure that when we're telling stories, we make sure that we include the Afro Latinx community in those stories. And I think that our audiences so far have seen that. They've been able to see, like last year, we did a workshop production of Jaleesa J. Robinson's The Story of Us. And that was kind of how the Latinx community and the Black community come together, and how there's a tension there. And then you have those who are Afro Latinx there in between, right? And what is that like? And so a lot of what we do is kind of putting it on the stage, and making sure that our audiences can see our Afro Latinx brothers and sisters and know that they're there and they exist and they matter. And so that's a big part of what we as TEATRX do to kind of make sure that the Black and Afro Latinx community is visible on our stages. We want to make sure that they're there on our stages because they're part of the community that we live in, and the Latinx community is often right alongside the Black community in all over the city, especially in Houston. And so a lot of what we want to do is make sure that our audiences are seeing them. They're in, we are Latinx theater, but the people around us still exist. So that means we don't only have Latinx actors, right? Because that's not all the world is, right? Just like the world is not just white actors on a stage, because that's not what it looks like. And so we want to make sure that when we put people on stage, it really shows that we are part of this community. It's through our lens, but the people around us don't necessarily need to look just like us, sound like us, because we want to really show the range of Latinidad.
Yeah, and then as far as this new venture of like on these balcony readings, how has that kind of been? Like, how have the actors, how's that community, your audience responded to that?
So it's been interesting because some of it is like, wait, y'all are doing a web series or a play? And we're like, we're doing both. And so that's been interesting, and like just really getting to know, like, I know we're a theater company, but we're online, and if we're gonna do something that's filmed, we're gonna do it in kind of a and make it into like a genre type thing. We won't just film us doing theater because that doesn't really work. It's not the same experience. And so it seems like people are really excited. They're responding by letting us know that it's how cool it sounds. We have some of the community involved in the project. They've sent us some tapes of their own isolation stories or social distancing stories. And so some of that you'll see in our episode 4 about love and Shakespeare and love in the time of COVID. And so we've gotten to hear a lot from the community about how they identify with what's happening with Romeo and Juliet, how they're separated, and how they feel the same.
Great. So we're going to move a little bit into kind of like the technical aspects. So Marissa, could you kind of talk about what technology, softwares, methods are using to engage your audience? I mean, you mentioned earlier dropping off equipment to your actors, but what is really going in, like in terms of like the technical stuff?
So some of it's a headache. Some of it's a really big headache. Zoom can be great because we can all get together and we can record our meetings so that they can compile them into the web series. But sometimes the recordings don't work. Sometimes I get one view and I want another view. And so there's been some growing pains. We record on at least 2 devices because you have to, because things go wrong. And our editors, Jorge Diaz and Anthony Almendares, they're exclusively working on Premiere, Adobe Premiere, and they've encountered their own problems. The other day, the whole, I guess, internet went crazy with T-Mobile, and that's been difficult. Those are some things that like you can't control. So we had our editors who had a whole day where they couldn't do anything. because some stuff was in the cloud or because their internet wasn't working because it was T-Mobile. Like, so there's been a lot of like that, the stop and start, and just kind of really getting used to doing everything dependent of the internet. It's difficult, it's challenging, and it's been something that we just have to go, well, thinking about the live performance, planning for all eventualities, all eventualities, internet problems, weather problems, everything you can think of. It's difficult.
Yeah, what cameras are y'all using?
iPads. iPads. We did spring for a couple mics. They're little that plug into the iPads, just because the iPads are very mobile and accessible. I mean, one of our actors had one. We let them borrow the other one. We let them borrow one just because the picture is really good. And then with the mic, I think the sound will really help a lot. And then webcam footage, basically whatever the person is recording at home at. So some of it's just off their computer that the webcam caught. Some of it is phone. We experimented with different types of recording devices for the actors to try and figure out for the final performance what exactly they were going to use. And so they did laptops, they did cell phone, and then I think we landed on the iPad because it's just shows up. It looks like a computer screen on Zoom, and then it goes all the way across. The phone kind of crops it a little bit, and it creates those bars on the side, which can be a little weird for what the effect we're trying to go for. And so we tried different things. It's been fun experimenting.
And then finally, what editing software, like what are y'all using to kind of cut those?
That's Adobe Premiere. And so I think we have two editors, Anthony Almendarez and Jorge Diaz, and they're kind of splitting up the episodes. And so some of that's fun, and that they're like, well, they're learning from each other a lot. Like Jorge's like, don't use the cloud, because one day Anthony lost a whole day of work. He was like, I can't do anything. It keeps like glitching and da-da-da. And so they're learning from each other on kind of the best way to navigate that. And each of their episodes, I think, has their own little bit of flair that shows a little bit about them and who they are as filmmakers, which is I think a lot of fun. They'll get to like 2 episodes each, and you'll get to see a little bit of kind of the work that they do.
Absolutely. Matt, going to you. So Filipinx Artists of Houston has a presence. They have their own website. You'll have Instagram, Facebook. Could you talk about like what social medias you're using and like what each one does and like what you're looking to kind of, what other like technologies or softwares maybe you're looking into to best, put Filipinx artists out there and even within your own members?
Really what we're trying to do is document as much as we can, like everything has to be documented. So like all of our meetings, we have photos, we have group photos. All of our events, we have photos, all of the events that we try to sponsor with are, documented as well. And then, like for myself, I started, like with the A-Leaf Art House, I also started using my phone to document because I wanted to document Thomas Trance's show for June. So I basically got some guidance from this other group called Joy Luck Film Club, which is a group of friends of mine who are into cinema and film and photography. So yeah, I mean, and then I just put together like a video showcasing this stuff. So like just another way of documenting it with where I'm not just taking photos and just putting it on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. But Facebook is mainly our platform where we get to share articles, we get to share news, we get to share other members and what they do or what they've accomplished. And then Instagram is more of like our reach out tool where we can like communicate with other communities, outside of Houston, or how, or we use it to also, like amplify other communities. So
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'm actually I'm going to show the Instagram page because I think y'all have like really great images of like the amazing work that your members are doing. Let me see. Let me show that real quick. Yeah, so like I mean, it goes without saying, y'all have some really, again, incredibly talented artists, and I think featuring that's also like an important aspect of any community, is to kind of show the work that your members are doing. And yeah. So I think this is Filipinx Artists of Houston. If you look that up on Instagram, again, really great images, really great stuff.
Yeah, we also have different people managing them, so it's great having everyone kind of like contribute in that way.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, no, that's a really great insight of like, yeah, like kind of having the community have different input. And you've said that before with the Google Doc, another piece of software that y'all seem to have used effectively, and having that communal kind of like input. And so I think that's a really great thing that you're highlighting, that you're showing here.
Yeah.
And so kind of like rounding out the discussion with both of you, I guess my next question is like, are these methods or are these certain things that if we live in a world post COVID-19, what are you going to carry forward with that? Like what you've learned through this crisis. So I can ask that for you, Matt, first.
One thing I learned is that there's a lot of things we can do within the comfort of our own homes. It's almost like the whole idea of not everyone really needs to be in the office to make like a company function. So it makes you think about like space and how much we take up space. And I mean, for us artists, it's very important. We need space to showcase our works. We need space to convene and all that. But like a lot of like the back side of things can be done, more efficiently, I think, especially like using the softwares and like Google Doc or Excel or Google Drive and other resources that's available for us. Yeah, I mean, even like Discord or Slack or all those other messaging tools, it just makes everything like organized, and then we can always go back to those things in the event that we need to go back to older files. They're just it's all a matter of like streamlining everything so that we can just focus on planning ahead.
Absolutely. Marissa, same question. What, even though you said it's kind of like a pain, but it's also, I'm sure, like a totally exciting adventure. Is this something, let's say if we happen to live in like in a post-COVID-19 world, what do you think what are some things that you think would carry forward from this experience for TEATRX? You're on mute.
I think the behind the scenes stuff is something that people are interested in. I think it gives a little more authenticity, and I think our audience, they like to know the process that it takes to get there, because when people come and see shows, that's it. It's already lights, costumes, but there's so much that goes behind the scenes of that. It's like the picture of like the iceberg, and then you only see the tip, and it goes and goes and goes. That's all the work that goes behind putting together a production. And I think that the audience, they're really they really like to see all the other work that goes on in the background. And I think it really shows how valuable theater arts is for people, and how much it shouldn't be taken for granted. And we have lots of artists right now who are out of work, and you'll hear from some of them in episode 2, and I think it really shows how valuable they are, how valuable everyone who works backstage is, and how all the work that goes in before you finally put a production up. I think showing more of that, showing more of all the work that happens and all the people involved in that work, I think it's important, and I enjoyed getting to document that through the Zoom meetings and stuff, and getting to see the conversations that happen before, the final thing, the final production. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think kind of the great thing that y'all are highlighting is sort of like these communal efforts that go into like any kind of like action on behalf of a group or like for a collective. Because the reason why, we particularly as Fresh Arts chose y'all is to kind of speak on this, because y'all are working, from a viewpoint of like people who have usually been excluded from kind of institutional support, and y'all are doing these amazing efforts without that support, but with support from within the community. And I think that's really great work that y'all are doing, and I appreciate that. And you're proving it every day that it can happen. So thank you so much. So last kind of question for y'all. Matt, you can start off. What's been your biggest takeaway from this experience, like as a leader of a group, as someone who goes into creating your own space with A-Leaf Art House, being an artist? What's been your biggest takeaway from this? And you're muted. Sorry.
My biggest takeaway, I don't know, a lot of like I don't know, I guess a lot of folks kind of like glorify the term founder, but then for me, I never really realized that I was the one who was looking for that sense of community. So just that feeling of that being fulfilled, like that emptiness being fulfilled, means a lot to me, and it truly shows the power of community, which I believe is like a weird thing for the culture that we have here in the United States, because we're raised to believe in like an individuality and all that, but the whole idea of community and community power really changes that.
Yeah, thank you. Marissa, same question. What's been your biggest takeaway, either as like an actor or as someone who helps this organization and represents this organization, leads it? What is your biggest takeaway from this whole experience?
Our Latinx artists they are hungry to be seen and to be recognized, and especially the young artists. They're so talented, and they are so ready to show Houston that we're here and we exist, and we have stories that no matter how old you are, where you're from, you can see yourself in the Latinx community creating these stories. And I think there's a hunger to show that, to show these stories. And we get people all the time like, hey, you're doing work that I would love to do. How can I be a part of it? And it's really wonderful that there's just so many people out there who want to be a part of making sure the Latinx stories are being told on stage in Houston. It's about time. 44% of the population. We should be everywhere all the time on stage.
Thank you. So last thing, Matt, any shout outs, any online digital presence that you want to direct people to? Go ahead.
Yeah, definitely. I want to talk about Asia Society holding FemFest Houston, Voices of Asia. They are now doing an online viewing of The Hatmaker's Wife, written by Lauren Yee, directed by Christine Hugueta, and with assistant director Civil Science, who are both Filipinx Arts of Houston members. Also, Karina Montana Bowers is also a member. So they're part of that. It's being screened right now, so you should check it out. And then there's another thing that we're doing. It's called Behind the Mask, a poetry convergence, hosted by Voices in These Pandemic Times. It's basically a night of poetry with voices of the community, young and old, and we have a lot of members who's also going to be part of it. It's this Saturday, June 20. It's going to start from 8:30 p.m. to 11 p.m. And we have Facebook events for those, and we will share them on our Facebook page as well.
For Facebook and Instagram and all that stuff, you just look up Filipinx Artists of Houston.
Mm-hmm.
Great. So again, thank you so much, Matt, for all the work that you do and all the great. Yeah, like you're a hero of mine. So it was great to kind of talk to you, Matt. Yeah, I know. I don't say it, but thank you for the work you do, Matt. Marissa, same question. Any shout outs, any digital presences that you want to direct people towards?
Yeah, you can find us on Facebook and Instagram at TEATRX. That's TEATRX. Our web series launches on Monday, 8:30 Central Time. There's an episode every day, Monday through Thursday, and then we have a live performance of the balcony scene on Friday. If you go to our website, TEATRX.org, you can follow our newsletter, just because we have some news coming along the pipeline about our Children's Film Festival and amateur film competition in Sukasa Film Festival, which will be at the end of next month, July. So TEATRX.org, sign up for our newsletter, and you can get information about that.
Awesome. Thank you. You as well, a hero of mine. I'm so glad that, y'all are representing, the Houston artist community in your own ways. And thank you for all the amazing work you do. I'm ever inspired by you too.
Thank you, Reyes.
Awesome.
I'm
work.
also a big fan.
All right. So everyone tune into their work, and very important work being done. So again, I'll see y'all later.
Thank you.
So there you have it. Again, I mean, I'm sure at the end there you're probably rolling your eyes at my fanboying of both of their work. But again, I'm being really honest and sincere and saying that there is important work being done by so many groups here in Houston, and there are just two of so many others. So please pay attention to their work, tune into their work. It's really a lot of trailblazing, a lot of great stuff being done. So on that note, moving forward, next Thursday, we're going to have another great discussion. And that one will be with Writers in the Schools, WITS, and Houston Center for Photography. We're going to be speaking with representatives of those organizations and how they're adjusting to the digital landscape. And in particular, their teaching pedagogical methods. They're both organizations that have aspects of teaching youth, of teaching people art and creative practices and writing and all that good stuff. And how are they adjusting? How are those organizations adjusting to this landscape of COVID-19 and transitioning to an online format? So that'll be a really great discussion, just to learn kind of what other people are doing in that regard. So tune in next Thursday, 4 p.m. In regards to July, we'll be announcing something very soon in regards to how we're moving forward with conversations in July. But same thing, they'll be at 4 p.m., same time, same place. And we'll give you more information on that soon. Just stay tuned in. Again, you can sign up for newsletters for that information. So you can sign up for Art on Tap. That newsletter, which every Tuesday will give you the lowdown on arts happenings in Houston that we find or people submit to us, and then our artist resource newsletter. That one goes out every first Thursday, so you'll be getting that not next week, but the week after that, and then a resource roundup that goes in conjunction with that. That's every first Thursday. Yes, first Thursday. Sorry. So first Thursday of the month, you'll be getting that newsletter and a resource roundup to go with it, to kind of go through what other resources are happening in Houston and beyond that you can apply for and get, hopefully. Some other things going on. So one, continuing to offer these discussions, these efforts, requires a network of support. So we kindly ask that you consider supporting our organization by becoming a friend of Fresh Arts if you have the means. Your support allows us to develop resources that respond to the unique needs of artists and artist-led organizations in your region and help strengthen the art sector by supporting the people who make it all possible, the artists. So go ahead, join our squad right there. Bam, bam. And then finally, in the last 2 months, we've had these series of live webinars and virtual conversations, and we've reached pretty much nearly like 30,000 views. So to kind of better inform us on the impact of this initiative, we humbly invite you, the viewer, to complete our brief impact survey. Your response will allow us to continue these efforts and will inform the future of our programming. So please fill out the survey. It really helps us out to understand, what you want to see, whether we're doing is helpful to the community. That's always very important to us. So again, thank you so much. Tune in next Thursday for another great conversation. Help out as many artists as you can. Tune into their work. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Have a good weekend.